So for sine of negative 5 pi over 6, again, I'm going to just do my two-step process. And I actually write out these blanks so that I sort of remember there are two tasks that I have. So the first thing is I need to figure out the plus or minus sign. Now this time we're working with a negative angle. So I'm going to say here would be 0, rotating around clockwise. This would correspond to negative pi over 2, negative pi, negative 3 pi over 2, etc., etc. And then here I'd be back to negative 2 pi. Okay. Again, it's going to be easier to see where this angle is if I get a common denominator. Looks like we want 6. So I'll take negative pi over 2 and multiply it by 1 in the form of 3/3. That's negative 3 pi over 6. Negative 5 pi over 6 is more negative than that. But negative pi, if I multiply that by 1 in the form of 6/6, that's negative 6 pi over 6. That's rotating past negative 5 pi over 6. So I can see that negative 5 pi over 6 is going to put me in quadrant 3. Now, we're looking at sine. That's the y value on the unit circle. In quadrant 3, y is negative. Excellent. Now, I need to know what this reference angle is. Remember, the reference angle is always the acute angle between the terminal ray and the x-axis, and we always count it as a positive angle. So it doesn't matter that I've been working with negative angles up until this point. We're just looking at how much rotation is there. And here, in the negative direction, this was 5 pi over 6, this was 6 pi over 6. The difference between them would be just pi over 6. Pi over 6, that's my 30-degree angle. So, I'm more of a triangle person, so I go right to the 30, 60, 90 triangle. 1, 2, root 3. Sine of 30 degrees, which is pi over 6, would be 1/2. So we get 1/2. Now, some folks, like I say, have just memorized the values on the unit circle, and that's perfectly fine, as long as you also understand how reference angles work so that you can handle situations where your reference angle is not pi over 6, pi over 4, or pi over 3. Okay, so then we've got secant of negative pi over 4. So again, we're rotating in the negative direction. Pi over 4 would be an acute angle, so this is just the opposite of an acute angle. So there we go. So I can see we ended up in quadrant 4. Now secant is the reciprocal of cosine, so it's going to have the same plus or minus sign that cosine does. Cosine would be the x value. In quadrant 4, that's positive. Now, it's not necessary to write a plus sign in front of a positive number. I usually will write that as I'm working this out just so I can look over and say, oh, I did the first step already. Good. Moving on to step 2, what's my reference angle? And my reference angle is just positive pi over 4, because it's the amount of rotation between the x-axis and the terminal ray, regardless of the direction. So pi over 4 is 45 degrees. So I come over to my 45, 45, 90 triangle, 1, 1, root 2. Cosine would have been adjacent over hypotenuse 1 over root 2. So secant is the reciprocal of that, root 2 over 1. And of course I can simplify that. So that's just going to be root 2. Notice when I simplified, I didn't bother to write the plus sign because I was aware if I was writing my final answer that I had already done the first step.